It's going to be on video.
I missed the first 5 minutes if I got the first record.
That's why they need to get somebody to do it.
All of a sudden I hear beep, I go, why is it beeping already? Did I run out of batteries? That's the first record.
Good evening. Given the length of our presentations earlier, which were really terrific, it was great to see the kids and hear from them and see even the little ones come out at this hour and then try to eat a piece of cake and go home and go to sleep. Good luck, Mom and Dad. We're going to keep our administrative report somewhat short tonight, but tonight is the night that we set the tax levy. And by that what I mean is under the new law, which came into play when they put in place the tax cap, the community must pass the levy. They don't approve a school budget the way they used to, as you know, if you've been in these meetings. They approve a maximum tax levy. So by that what I mean is the school district, the Board of Education, could actually approve something lower. And so what you're going to see tonight is some information regarding about how we are going to set the levy lower than we originally projected. Some of it you heard about during the audit committee meeting. And Mrs. Newman is going to go through that information for you. But if you look up on the screen, as you can see that the first year that we started the zero-based budgeting process, we had a tax levy increase of 2.96%. There was no tax cap at that point, but we came in at 2.96 nonetheless. And then in 12-13, there was a tax cap in place. We continued with the zero-based budgeting process. Our cap was actually 4.1, but we put before the voters and approved a 2.6. And this year, our cap was 4.73. We put before the voters a 2.91, but tonight we're going to be asking the board to approve a 1.585, lower than the amount budgeted and approved by the community. At this time, Mrs. Newman, Assistant Superintendent for Business, is going to go through the numbers and how we were able to manage that and reduce the originally approved tax levy increase. Mrs. Newman.
I said, it's a tough act to follow this evening. I don't sing and I don't dance. But I'll do my best. Hopefully I won't bore everyone to death. Some of the things in going through the budget process that we wanted to discuss tonight was about some of the accomplishments that we have been able to work through over the past number of years. One of which is certainly extremely important to our community parents, is the fact that at this point in time, we've seen a reduction in the average K-5 class size. If we go back to the 2009-2010 year, that average was slightly over 24. People say, well, how do you get a 0.05 of a child? But again, it's an average, so you'll see there may be one class that has 23 and another class that has 25. When we look forward to our school year of 2012-2013, that number had dropped to slightly below 23 at 22.95. So while we're going through the economic downturns, the difficulties, certainly the conservative approaches we've been taking to maintain our programs while keeping our tax levy as low as possible, we've also been able to keep that program intact and actually decrease those class sizes. Some of the restorations that we've been able to accomplish while doing this balance are putting back elementary intramurals, the ELA and math workshops, various clubs, honor societies. So we're very proud that we've been able to do those things and really strike that balance with the community. One of the biggest questions will be that we saw Mr. Rodriguez, who did a wonderful job coming up here to present the audit report, is how did we actually accomplish and reduce the tax levy increase, as Dr. James has said, down to under 1.6%. When we were going through the budget development process, we had pledged to the community that we would be putting $8 million towards reduction of the tax levy and also towards maintaining our instructional program and that integrity. After going through the full fiscal year and closing our books, we have pledged an additional $1.7 million and raised that number to 9.7. That 9.7 is what has allowed us to decrease what the tax levy that had been approved by the voters last May. So I want to go through a little bit to explain to the community how we arrived at that $9.7 million. The first area, plans contingency. As we've been going through all of our budget development process and meetings, we've talked to the community, and the board has shared with the community that we do have what we have termed a planned contingency within the budget. And that planned contingency is there so that when unexpected things happen that we're not specifically budgeted for, we have the flexibility and the ability to make sure we can cover those needs and not change the instructional programs. Now, out of that last year, we utilized about $500,000 of that planned money for items that we did not anticipate. And some of those maybe we'll see overages. We'll see where we need to have an additional 0.2 FTE added. That sometimes happens when children enroll in specific classes and we need to open up a section, or perhaps we need to open up a class section. So I'll give you a little bit of an idea. And as I go through, I'm going to share with you some items that we have encountered this year. So once we say we've spent or utilized some of that planned contingency, how much is left that's still within the budget when we close out our year? And at the end of the 12-13 budget, we had about $3.2 million of that 3.7 available that had been unspent. Now that $3.2 million, while to you and I as an individual is quite a bit of money, we would all be happy to end our fiscal year with money like that set aside, that translates into less than 2% of our total budget. It's just about 1.8689%. Then going forward, there are other areas in the budget that, again, we monitor the budget throughout the year. We call it budget administration, making sure there are times where we will expect to pay a certain amount for gasoline, electricity, our insurance, a whole host, just like you in your home. We're anticipating more than a year in advance how much we think those will cost. As we go through the budget, we may not spend all of that, and we also may find occasions where we've actually gotten additional revenue that we had not anticipated or planned for. So at the end of the 12-13 year, in our special education portion of the budget, we were able to not spend $1.8 million of budgeted funds. Now, where that came from was we were able to bring some students back who attended private placements outside of Commack schools, bring them back, educate them here in their home district. That saves us money, usually, because high-need students, in many cases, if we have the availability and we have, if you will, a number that makes sense, that's cost-effective, it will reduce what our costs are. In addition, some of our BOCE's tuition costs for our high-need students came in at lower than what we had initially projected those increases would be. So we were able to utilize and save some of those budgeted funds. That's part of the $9.7 million. Our instructional expenses, again, we were able to not spend about $1.3 million, and that again is through going through monitoring staffing. Do we need to add staff? Can we contract in any way? We're also monitoring what our usage of services are. Those are areas that also. Employee benefits, we were very fortunate. We did switch carriers to recognize significant savings in our HMO plan. Also, the night shift, which our Empire plan, that came in at lower premiums than had been anticipated. And also, the Affordable Care Act has not yet kicked in and cost districts any additional funds at this point. Overall, out of the $171 million budget, there were other areas that total about $450,000 of various items that were not fully expended. If If you were here for any of our budget development workshops, one of the things we've been talking about significantly is the use of our reserves. Over time, the district has been able to set aside some surpluses into reserves, which are there for different liabilities, as Mr. Rodriguez had alluded to earlier this evening. ERS is the Employees Retirement System. We utilize $350,000 of that reserve to offset the cost of paying those bills. Just to point out, that reserve, you can never use more of that reserve than you actually spent for that planned item. So the $350,000 had to specifically go towards that pension system, which of course it did. Our debt service fund, we utilized and saved about $1.2 million overall. We did a large restructuring or refinancing of about $50 million of debt. We were able to cut the interest rate by doing so, very similar to if you refinance your home, you get a lower interest rate. Because of that, we twofold did not have to make one interest payment, which recognized the savings, and we also immediately got that interest saved. So that was about $1.2 million. So when we analyzed that budget, that's how we were able to come up with increasing the amount of applied fund balance to offset the tax levy at $9.7 million. Some of the items that we did, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but there were some specific things that we've done in previous years that generated savings, and some of that savings carries forward into future years. So for instance, back in 2011, 2012, we approached our transportation providers, asked them, what can you do? We want to stay with you. Can you help us out? We're trying to keep the tax levy as low as we can. We're dealing with tax cap. And they renegotiated and opened up that bid with us. They didn't have to do it. They did, and we generated $350,000 in savings, and that's a savings that continues. Our HMO contract, we had renegotiated that. We actually renegotiated that twice. And I should make recognition to our employee benefits department because a lot of work is involved. And when we said, we're changing again, second time in 3 years, they understood why, and they were wonderful about doing that. And that saved a significant amount of money. In addition, some of the items that we had also done, which generates, in some cases, revenue, in addition to some areas where we're saving budget, is we created a program for the Commack special needs students. That was the area where the PPS department, Special Education Department, looked at our out-of-district placements and said, is there a way that we could put those children back in Commack School District? Twofold, we're educating our kids in our schools, and can we do it at a cost savings? And they were able to accomplish that at a significant dollar amount, as you can see. What we also did, wait, as if I had something to do with this, I apologize, Mrs. Ryan. Mrs. Ryan and her team created, in addition, in doing that, a guest student program where we're able to accept other children with similar needs from other districts. It makes our classes more efficient, more effective, and we are then able to bill and collect tuition from those other districts, which helps us to be more efficient with our payment strategies as well. We had done administrative restructuring. Our rental facilities, we've seen some shifting over a number of years. We reanalyzed our staffing, and we reduced staffing where we could. We also restructured our overtime. We've had significant decreases to our overtime costs, and that kudos to Mr. Schramm and Mr. DeMarzo of the facilities who have taken that down about 60% over the past couple of years. So all of these items contribute to why we had a large surplus and we were able to lower our tax levy. Again, going through some of the revenue streams that we had done, state operating review, we had done that. We generated significant funds. We've looked at our transportation area. Could we do more effective routing? we saved funds there, and that's over and above the renegotiation of the contracts. We've done very targeted initiatives to look at different areas, not only of the revenue, but also of the expenditures, to keep our taxes as low as we possibly could, while also applying as much funds as fiscally prudent to keep those programs and services that we have intact. When we go through all of these items, transportation aid, when we do effectively and better economize our routing, we generate more transportation aid. So those are some areas. So overall, when we look through all of these different areas that we've done over the past few years, we've been able to accomplish savings that total more than $11 million. Looking at our unapplied fund balance and our reserves. Unapplied fund balance is the area that Mr. Rodriguez had talked about earlier, that under statutory law, school districts may not have more than 4%. When we talked about the Mount Sinai district, that is the district that was recently cited by the controller for, quite frankly, ignoring that statutory law and exceeded it. In Commack, looking over the past 3 years, as you can see, in 2011, 2012, we were at 4%. We could not go over that, and we never have gone over that. We are at or under that statutory requirement. When we ended 2012, 2013, we had a little over $6.4 million. That was 3.9%, again, under the 4%. And during the budget process, the Board of Education had pledged that we would not add to that. Any monies over and above that would be used to maintain our program and keep our tax levy low. As we ended on moving forward into the 2013-2014 year, again, that number at June 30th, 2013, true to the board's word, stayed the same. Now that number is 3.6%. And the reason for that is, as your budget may increase as a percentage, that number, we're losing our base, if you will. Our total reserves, and again, we've talked about this, the board has been utilizing reserves in a very fiscally prudent way, and we started in 11-12 with $11.6 million. Moving to the 2013-14 year, that number will be reduced to about $9.7 million. So again, the board has been utilizing those reserves in order to keep our taxes as low as we can while still maintaining the programs and services that we have. Really what we've been trying to do, and the board has been trying to do, is strike a balance. And it really is a balancing act to maintain what we have in our programs, in our schools, and yet also be fiscally observant to what the community is telling us that they can bear. So we've allowed to have modest planned contingencies. This year, the $3.7 million, that equates to slightly over 2% of our overall budget. Again, Mount Sinai had been criticized. They had between 6.7 and 11.4%. In Commack, if we look at the 2008-2009 year through 2011-2012, our range was 2.7 to 3.9. So we're comparing 2.7 and 3.9 to 6.7 and 11.4. So as Mr. Rodriguez kept saying, we're not like Mount Sinai. Now in 12-13, that number did jump up to about 5.9%. Again, well below, and as Mr. Rodriguez kept pointing out, the difference, Mount Sinai kept that money, did not use it to offset taxes, put it into their unapplied fund balance when they were not permitted to do so under the law. Here in Commack, that number was larger, and you see there's a corresponding increase to the applied fund balance that is offsetting the taxes. When we talk about maximizing applied fund balance is that number that is applied to offset taxes and maintain programs. Again, we have to stay under the 4% of our unapplied fund balance. Currently, as was shown in the previous slide, our unapplied fund balance is at 3.6%, which is 0.3% lower than it had been in the previous year. Another district was between 6% and 14%. So again, very different what's happening here in Commack. One of the things that we've been very proud of while striking this balance and trying to maintain both sides of the equation is that Moody's reaffirmed our AA2 rating. Even though we are strategically utilizing reserves, we are not building our unapplied fund balance. They have recognized the board's fiscal integrity, and they've cited that in their report. They've cited the budgetary practices that we use. There was a recent district on the South Shore, Bay Shore, which has utilized their reserves, and that's not a criticism. Different communities need to do different things for different reasons, but they have been utilizing their reserves, and Moody's recognized that and downgraded their investment rating. So that's something that we are trying to strike that balance to maintain that. When we have a good Moody's credit rating, when we do go out and refinance bonds, when we sell bonds, we get a lower interest rate. So that good credit rating actually then lives on for perhaps 15, 20 years in the case of bonds. I know Dr. James had said to try to make it quick, but in absence of not singing and dancing, I thank you, and I will turn it back over to Dr. James.
We had plenty of singing and dancing earlier. Thank you, Mrs. Newman. I want to commend the business office and every other department that plays a role in managing our funds in a way that put us in a position to actually reduce the projected and community-approved tax levy increase. So these are techniques that are being utilized. I want to be clear with the board. A number of things that you saw today, we cannot continue over time. Some things are what we call one-shot savings. So the money comes in when we receive additional state aid, or the money comes in when there's a one-shot savings or a LIPA rebate. We use that, we apply it, we lower the tax levy. We have to manage that moving forward. So as we look at our multi-year plan, we make adjustments accordingly. One way that we can manage that is declining enrollment, and over time, believe it or not, that supports managing the budget effectively. When we run out of some of those one-shots, we call it affectionately some of the low-hanging fruit. So the first 3 years, Mrs. Newman and I really spent a lot of time determining where some of that low-hanging fruit was, managed it. You see it identified here tonight, and we are recommending that the board approve a tax levy increase of 1.585. At this time, I'll entertain any questions from the Board of Education.
I'm under the impression, and let me know if I'm wrong, that our enrollment is up, our special ed enrollment is up, and because of APPR, Common Core, we've got extra AIS services. And I'm wondering if that can be quantified into a dollar amount as to how much we're anticipating spending over the original budget on items that we may have had in reserves for this year.
That's a great question, Mr. Wunsch. I'll start with special education, and I'll offer some detail. Some of the things that Mrs. Newman pointed out in special education when she talked about returning students to district and looking at their programs that Mrs. Ryan and her staff so effectively does. You can't know that until they go through CSEs. So as students go through CSEs, sometimes change in program results in a change that in some ways saves the district money. In other times, it results in changes in the program that cost the district money. So, and sometimes students move in. And that's just a natural flow of any school district. It is one of the more volatile expenditure components in our budget. So we track that very closely. And this year there have been changes to the program that have resulted in a number of staff hirings, all quantifiable, to the tune of about $650,000. So the contingency funds that were built into this year's budget have been depleted by $650,000 in special education services. And of course, CSEs are continuing. Mrs. Ryan, I think, was in CSEs pretty much all day today. And when she goes into CSEs, her primary objective is to support the needs of the student. and wherever possible, bring them in district. So we want to educate them in their home school, and it does result in a cost savings. Even if the program costs as much, there's now no transportation costs associated with that, as we don't have to bus them to Levittown or Massapequa or Center Ridges or some other district. In addition to that, as we promised last year when we built the budget, to maintain class sizes, even if there was a change in enrollment over the summer. So there were changes in enrollment over the summer, and then overall the district only grew by about 12 students. However, where those students enrolled resulted in shifts in staffing. So there were staff added to the high school in some cases so that electives could run, as we indicated we would do when we developed the budget. And at the elementary school at Burr, there was we reached one of those do not exceed numbers, and we added a section. The list actually goes on. In addition, due to the state mandates around academic intervention services, if you haven't been following the, for lack of a better term, mismanaged state assessment program by the state, that resulted in the addition of, it looks like about 3 additional teachers, another $460,000 in total on this page, so about $1.1 million of the planned contingency has been depleted. So, and that's why we build a planned contingency. We have a planned contingency in the budget now as well for the Affordable Care Act. We're not really sure what the Affordable Care Act is going to cost us at this point because they keep postponing its implementation. Some of the guidelines are still unclear. Mr. Kalahifar and I just met today to talk about some of those guidelines, and we're still seeking clarification on those laws. So we're not really sure how that will play out with some of the planned contingency that is there as well. So we are trying to strike this balance between how we're utilizing our planned contingency and then where we can find other savings, which, as I indicated earlier, get more and more difficult to accomplish. One of the things that we do, as you know, shortly, and I try not to tell my staff this, we freeze the budget, but we don't tell them when. And then only mandatory expenditures are allowed after that. It is a common practice in school districts. It just is then a matter of when do you actually freeze that budget. So that, but if they come in and say, listen, we need out pellets for a science class, we're not denying that's part of the program. If it were textbook purchases report approved by the board, that is something that we appropriate. It just then is a matter of how can we utilize our current resources and what we have. So those are the kind of things that we do.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions by the board? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our presentation.
Okay, before we get to the rest of the meeting, I will now open the microphone to anyone who has questions on agenda items only. Please remember there'll be time at the end of the meeting to ask questions on anything you'd like to ask questions on. And please remember there is a 3-minute time limit.
Good evening, Dan Fusco. Wasn't prepared for that budget presentation, but agenda items. I guess the first thing we'll start off with is the 3-minute time rule that we got here. I went to the library and went through the policy books and didn't see any policy with a 3-minute time limit. It looks like you guys are going to try and pass a new policy restricting everybody to 3 minutes, but I don't think that policy is in effect right now. And I understand that you have the latitude to limit people.
This is not going to go against your 3 minutes. There is a policy in effect, 1121, it has been, which does not state a time. 10 or 15 years ago when we set up the policy, it was an unofficial 3 minutes. It was never in writing. We said at the beginning of this year we were going to enforce the 3-minute rule.
Well, I think the policy says it's a 5-minute rule, but I'm not going to.
It doesn't. The policy doesn't say anything. The current policy.
I'll bring you the policy and
Fine.
with the 5 minutes and I'll send that to you. But I just don't understand how you want to limit the audience to 3 minutes. I mean, when I sit down, I don't think there's going to be a line of people behind me, but we'll find out shortly.
That is irrelevant.
All right.
There's a reason for the 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes.
All right. The other issues were in the minutes. You're going to approve the minutes from the last couple of meetings. I saw in the minutes that You wrote in the August 29 minutes, it says there was a comment regarding the comments. It says status of portable trailers at the middle school. It's not. It wasn't the status of the minutes of the portables at the middle school. It was regarding the trailers at the high school. The minutes of September 12th. It said something to the effect that comments regarding the cost of removing the trailers. It wasn't the comment wasn't about the cost of removing the trailers. The comment was about making sure that you save the dedicated funds that the taxpayers paid to remove the trailers, so that we have those funds available when the time comes to remove those trailers.
Actually, and again, I won't hold you to the 3 minutes on this. That actually was not the comment you made. The comment you made was you told us we had already spent the money, and I had to assure you that we hadn't.
No, but I said to you, and I guess when it's still not on the same page that Mary Jo got it, I said, you as a school board did not spend the money. We, as the taxpayers, spent the money in the bond to pay to remove the trailers. You didn't pay a contractor, but you asked us for the money, and we gave it to you, and it's not semantics. We paid...
Mr. Fusco, go ahead. Now your 3 minutes are back in effect, so go ahead.
The other item on the minutes was, you had it listed, I think it was number 14, I guess I got down there. Donation by the Commack Educational Foundation of $1,000 to the Grand Friends Club. I just wanted for the record to be corrected that the donation didn't come from the Commack Educational Fund. It came from Gerwin. It came from the Martin Luther houses, and I believe it came from Dollars for Scholars.
This one I will correct you. The donation to this district came from the Commack Educational Foundation, and as a matter of fact, Dollars for Scholars did not pay anything. I approved Commack Educational Foundation paying the last $250 because the third donation did not come through.
Well, my understanding...
The donation to the district was from CEF.
My understanding...
CEF got donations from those other two entities, people. I don't want to be misquoted.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. Because you set up, what we went through in an email I sent to you guys was, if I want to donate the $1,000 to this cause, you make me give the $1,000 check to the CEF. That's my money that I have to give to your agency, that you then write the check to the Commack School District. That doesn't give you the benefit of claiming the credit for the donation. That's my donation.
Are you looking for aggrandizement for making the donation or for setting up the club?
What I'm looking for is the people that make the donation to get the recognition, because what that held against the people this year is people didn't want to make donations to it this year because they didn't get the recognition last year.
They were named last year also, by the way, Mr. Fusco.
It was the same story. It's at the CEF. And that's a policy that shouldn't be. Tonight we fixed it. I don't know how these people donated their money to the school district. You have it on the agenda tonight with
They didn't donate
generous people that donated stuff to the school district.
Time is up. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I got a question for you. I don't even like you. I'm Bill Marquez. I've been in Commack 56 years now. It's going. You're telling me when you budget before that we spent $1.1 million more for 12 students? $650,000 was for special ed. $450,000 was for 12 students.
No.
Okay.
Let me try to explain that a little better. I can see where you draw that conclusion.
Thank you.
And in fact, a good portion of that money was spent for what we call academic intervention services as a result of these new state testing programs, and that served several hundred students. The population increased by about 12 in total. In some grades it went up more, and in some grades it went down. So it was a matter of where the population increased so that we kept the class sizes where we promised. And others it had to do with special education services. So those services, they cost different amounts of money depending on the child and the type of service. So all in all, that money touched hundreds of kids.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You got it. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Dave Shapiro. It's the first time I've come to one of these meetings and actually stuck around.
Thank you.
What goes on. And so I want to thank you all, as you're all serving us. But I have some questions, and they're sort of sensible questions, but I'm not looking to have a fight. I'm looking for some information. So I hope my 3 minutes don't run out. So I picked up one of these sheets
We're
tonight.
very friendly, believe it or not.
Me too.
Good, go ahead.
So I picked up one of these sheets tonight, and I start leafing through it, and a couple of us noticed this. Things like band camp. My son, I have actually 3 kids at my school. My oldest son graduated valedictorian from the school. My middle son is still in this school. He's a senior, and he goes to band camp. They all went to band camp. And so I'm curious to know how these salaries work out. Frank Henson, instructor. Frank Henson, coordinator. Same days, 2 salaries. How did that work? Who can explain that?
Well, without having the detail in front of me, we'd have to, no, I understand what's on the paper. I have the paper.
Okay.
But we'd have to actually review the collective bargaining agreement as well as any assignment and the hours associated with that, but we can certainly provide that answer for you.
Well, I think you owe it to everyone in the room.
Well, there are stipends that are associated with various titles which have certain responsibilities, and someone can be handling more than one responsibility. It also depends on how much of a veteran they are in the district.
Simultaneously.
It's simultaneous.
Double billing.
That's what you're calling it?
No, that's what it's called. It's called double billing.
Okay, well, like you said, we're not going to argue. So
Right.
that we're going to do is get that material
It's
that will
important.
explain, and then you can come back with more questions. And
Go
we'll say,
through the list. Look for the names that are duplicated on the same days, and ask yourself that question. That's a very valid question.
okay, we'll all ask together.
Okay. Debt service fund. I'm a little confused about what the debt service fund is. What is that? Can someone explain that?
Sure, the debt service fund, school districts has to go by governmental accounting. So we have different funds. So the general fund is the area of the budget that the public votes on. The debt service fund is a fund that built up over time. Going back to 2001, the district passed a large bond. As those monies are borrowed, those monies are placed into separate bank accounts.
Okay, so it's a cash fund that moves
generate
around,
income.
and you appropriate it to various things, and when there's left over, that becomes a surplus?
It's only, any monies that are in the debt service fund can only be used for one item and one item only, and that is to pay down debt service. So those funds were used to pay down debt service only.
Okay, so rate, you refinanced your loans at a better rate, so did I. A lot of people did the same thing. What is the actual debt for? I mean, you have the money that's being paid into this, my tax money going directly into the school district. What is it that you're creating debt on?
Those are bonds that were created after the voters' approval to go ahead and do construction projects.
Bonds are paid for by other people.
No, the bonds are paid for by the district. So, for instance, going back to the 2001 bond, it was a $92 million bond. So the district goes out, borrows up to that $92 million, and pays that out over time.
Okay, got it. I guess the last of which, it may seem like a very small item, but one of the reasons we moved to this area 15 years ago was for the Commack schools. We knew that they were very high quality, we knew we were going to overpay, so to speak, for that privilege, and to that effect, my children did very well, are doing very well in the school district. And part of the reason is for all the beautiful programs that you have. I mean, every single event, I see that fellow, he runs everything good, right? Arts and music. He's a huge advocate. Math, science, very strong school. How can you consider cutting any sort of math program, any at all, knowing that the population of this district is behind math and science, 100%? So I hear a little birdie tell me that this little program called Math Counts is going to be cut. Is this true?
I have to look into that. It certainly didn't come out of our offices up here, but typically what happens is as they look at programs, and this is a normal course of action, we ask our staff, all of our staff, whether it's teachers and administrators, to review their programs for effectiveness. And if they're not as effective, then what would they eliminate it and put something in its place?
Yes, but do you balance it against how much money it costs?
Of course.
So when it's a small cost, does it still make it to the list of things to be cut?
Sure. It could. It depends. If there's going to be something else put in its place. So if they come forward and say, that's a $7,000 program, and we don't, here's the evidence that it's not as successful as we'd like. Because here's a litmus test.
How do you measure success?
Here's a
like
litmus
that?
test.
How do you do that?
Okay? So the question that's always asked is, what do we want students to learn, know, be able to do, and truly understand
Right.
at the end of any particular, whether it's a program
Well,
or
these are
class?
extracurricular things anyway. This is over and beyond what a school district demands,
Well,
right? It's
Yeah,
part of the curriculum.
they
So
are.
math counts as an extra thing that students get up early for, and
Sure.
parents nurture them through, and teachers volunteer for, even though they're not allowed to. And I understand the concept, and I know that when you cut things, you cut budgets by picking unimportant things that are constantly.
No.
No. You know, without having specifics on this particular item, because
Yep.
it's the first I'm hearing about it,
Yep.
but in general, what I'm telling you is our overarching philosophy is to look at the effectiveness of any program. And yes, there's always a likability factor. So do kids and staff like it? That certainly is what we call value added, sure, and those programs are maintained. Even if you can't measure, if you will, in some way, shape, or form, what it does for them academically. We do things like that all the time, and Commack actually does a lot of that.
You gotta
There's
measure it.
a lot of, I'm sorry?
You gotta measure it. You gotta measure it academically. That's why it's here.
But you can't.
You don't just arbitrarily pick a program and stick it in and say, okay, I'm going to try something called math.
Well, I have to tell you, that is a really overgeneralization. We never do that.
Okay, that's good.
So,
That's good. If you're not doing it arbitrarily, that's good. And if it's inexpensive to keep, then you should really lean towards keeping it. So
I'm confused about your question.
I want to make sure that things that are inexpensive to keep, that are good, stick around.
Whether they're measurably good or not measurably good, I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know how you measure good either. You know, we're going to
Well, I
have
wasn't asking you how to measure it. My staff measures whether or not it's an effective program. And there are different ways that can be measured. It can be measured anecdotally, it can be measured through observations, it can be measured through surveys, it can be measured through assessments. There are all kinds of ways where we determine whether something is of value.
I'd love
So I'm not sure that I can get into much more detail.
That's fine, and maybe we don't resolve this here, but it's something that should stay in your mind, right? So you're serving the public, you're serving this community, and keep it in your mind that it's very, very important to keep these programs alive. Even though this table may not think it's important, I can tell you that if you track a student, if you track a student from beginning of, let's say, middle school, where it really becomes vital that these programs are maintained, all the way through graduation, you might want to go have take your inventory about, which students really excel and why they excel. They excel because they were part of these programs.
If I could, and at this point I'll end it, but this table doesn't make those decisions arbitrarily. And I feel really strongly about that. There's a lot of work that goes into having conversations both with the community, with parents, with community members, with various organizations, with staff, even with students. And we do survey students, we have conversations with students, and then recommendations are made from the ranks.
Do you survey parents?
To my office.
Do you survey parents?
We don't. Do we send out surveys? No, we don't. But do we engage them in conversation all the time?
How do you survey the students?
It depends. Sometimes it's through conversation. Sometimes it's through a formal survey. In fact, there was one administered at the high school recently about the marking period instruction. So I'm not sure where we're going with this,
I'm just
but
curious. I'm learning something tonight. I mean, it's important,
and
right?
I certainly think
Before, right?
that what we can do is we do have various meetings where we get into some detail on this kind of stuff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Nice job, nice job.
I'm Ms. Passaro, and I just want to follow up on that because math counts was brought up. Math counts is slotted, is not on calendar for this year. And when you were talking about measuring success, the last 3 years, the kids in the math counts team went to the state level for competition. So they were top in New York State to go there and compete. So I think that they have proven that they're a very successful team. And from my understanding, and I went through old figures from last year, it costs about $1,000 to run that team for the entire year. and they are the top kids in middle school that compete at a very, very high level of mathematical ability. And I think that besides educationally for these kids to be able to compete at that level, it's a social thing for them as well, because they're at one end of the spectrum, a lot of times their intellectual ability, and it's very good for them to be with other children like them, like-minded like themselves, to compete together. The synergy that when they work together is palatable. You can feel the synergy and the way they learn from one another and their advisor. And I agree, I think it's imperative to keep this team together this year, to not let it go. They can still be registered by the middle of November. I think it's about $150 to register this team, and then the small stipend the advisor gets. But I think I agree, we have 4 kids in this district. We did our homework before we moved into Commack. They are known for many things, their music, their arts, but their math and science particularly. And I asked my son, who's a senior, who was in math counts, how he felt about math counts. Did he think it was so important, being that they have an 8th grade math team? And he said yes, because of that working together with that group of kids that are same ability as them. And he said it was an amazing springboard and catalyst for the varsity team at the high school level. And he said the reason that our math students that we all place through all the years, when they place state competitions, Suffolk County Math Awards dinner every spring, Commack, varsity team, he said it's because of that very high level math we do in our last year of middle school with that math counts team. So I too respectfully ask that board to really look into the math counts team, maybe just slid through somehow, but it's not the cost, and it's not because these kids have not been extremely successful. So please look into that. It's not too late to register this team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Iris Pissarro.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Elisa Glick, on the coattails of what she was just talking about. I'm sorry, what? I have light phone, sorry. Yeah, on the heels of what she was just discussing, in the age of the Common Core and how much emphasis is on critical thinking, and since there was such a surplus in the budget, is there any possibility of talk of reinstating the challenge and discovery team to every week instead of every other week, so it could be more effective for those students that qualify for that program?
The budget that was put forth to the board last year was the budget that was approved, and what we did this year when we reset the tax levy. Do we reconsider programs? We do look at programs all the time, and that has been a conversation, yes.
Is that a conversation that would actually be at the table, or is that just a conversation that's going to be put aside?
I'm sorry?
Is that a conversation that's going to be brought to the table, or is that just going to be a side conversation that's going to be put aside?
In my opinion, the conversation comes up frequently. It is something that is of value in the community. So I can't say whether it would be reinstated or not to the previous levels, but it is certainly something that is discussed, and I know there was a meeting just recently about it.
Okay. And then, Dr. James, you and I have had discussions about enrichment on the primary school level. I just want to bring it to the attention of the board and the community that there really is no enrichment on the primary school level for those children that need it, and especially now with Common Core. And I also want to know if there'll be any discussion about appropriation of funds for the primary school level for enrichment. It doesn't necessarily have to be a challenge and discovery type of thing, but there are resources and staff in the district that do provide assistance on the intermediate school level, and it's really not being utilized effectively on the level of primary school throughout the district. And I know that especially now that the teachers do not have as much autonomy and are bound by Common Core and don't have the ability to go outside those guidelines as they used to in the past, enrichment is really minimal at this point for those students that really, really could utilize it. Is there going to be any appropriations or any discussion of appropriation funds?
Again, that's something that comes up frequently, and I know that there have been active conversations about not only the Common Core and the limitations that it puts on our staff with regard to their abilities to provide enrichment and or other deep critical thinking types of activities, contrary to what is said by some of the political pundits. However, managing that internally, and we're going through a comprehensive review right now of our entire elementary program, in particular around this issue and how we're going to manage that moving forward. So would there be recommendations for appropriation of funds to supply that type of support? Yes. Can I promise you that it would be approved? No, but I can promise you it's certainly a deep conversation at our level.
Okay, and then my last question, comment, is, I work in education myself. I'm not a teacher, but I'm very closely involved with the teachers. I'm a related service provider, so I am in support with the teachers, and so I'm in pretty good understanding of Common Core, but I could pretty much speak for most of the community when they have absolutely no idea about Common Core and what Common Core really entails. And I know that Smithtown School District has instituted something called Parent University, in which they're providing workshops for parents regarding Common Core and making themselves available to answer questions about Common Core on the ELA and math level. Is that something that the district would be interested in doing, to educate the parents and really provide that information?
Yes. The district is working on several different fronts in this area. One is our advocacy efforts around Common Core assessments, not as much Common Core, but the assessment protocol. There is also, they'll be putting in place plans regarding parent outreach, what that's going to look like for us. Some will be parent workshops, some will be videos and other documents that we're going to supply to the community so that those that can't make the workshops can have that information. Some will occur in the school. Part of it is our deep conversations here, which are going to be around what it is that we are going to do within our ability to keep our program and not be as narrowly focused as the Common Core would have us be. So that is the piece. That's where if I want to call it delay, it is that we are working on that component so that we can have that conversation with folks. I expect that those conversations will begin right after the winter holidays. Okay?
Thanks, Dr. James. Thanks, Board.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, were you getting up or you were just playing around?
Hi, I'm Melanie Donis. I'm new in town and we're thrilled to be here. I have 3 children with autism. So if you see the over-enrollment in special ed, it would be my family, probably. And I'm a big advocate for this town. Kudos to Amy Ryan. I moved here just for your special ed team, and I want you to know that from the South Shore. I do have one quick question, and also I just want to back up with the 1.8 million savings. I think it is incredulous, and I just want to applaud you all for bringing the kids back. Every special needs student deserves the right to a least restrictive environment, and that is public school. And I'm thrilled to be in a district that doesn't send their kids out to BOCES right away when there's a behavioral issue, and you work on it, and you believe in your children, and that's why we moved here. So here's my quick question. I haven't had a chance to look through the financials, but can you tell me approximately how many children are in district outplaced from other districts in special education?
Let me just ask you mean from other districts?
Correct.
How many guest students we have?
Correct. 8.
Wow. It's
actually 10 at the moment.
Okay, great. That was my question. Thank you very much.
What's the highest grade level that they attend right now, Mrs. Ryan? Do you know?
Middle school.
Middle school.
Can I get a motion to approve personnel as attached? Motion made by Mrs. Cooper. I'll second it. And discussion I have a question on the webmaster salary. Is that a 10-month position or a 12-month position?
10.
Is that what's in the contract?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Passed unanimously. I will acknowledge correspondence. I assume it's on the attachment that everyone has, and we're just acknowledging it. There is no old business. Can I get a motion?
Old business? Any other questions? We can do it before. Couple other questions?
You take questions at the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Can I get a motion to approve the bids, Roman numeral 8, as attached? Motion made by Mr. Masiello, seconded by Mr. Hartman. Discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Only because we're running late, can I get a motion to approve 9 new business, A and B? Motion made by Mr. Templini, seconded by Mrs. Goober. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Can I get a motion to approve item C, 1 through 15 and 17? Motion made by Mrs. Masiello, seconded by Mrs. Goober. Discussion. All in favor? Can I get yes? Can I get a motion to approve item 16, Twin County Driving School? Motion made by Mrs. Goober, seconded by Mr. Hartman. Discussion. All in favor? 4. I'm opposed. New business items D, E, F, G, H. Oh, wait a minute. I think I have the old agenda, so bear with me a second. I apologize. No, I got it. I'm sorry. We changed the agenda, so I have the wrong items. I got it. What was I up to? D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, and O. Can I get a motion? Oh, and can we modify M to be accept the internal audit and the external audit that we presented with tonight? So M is amended. Can I get a motion made by Mr. Templini, seconded by Mrs. Cooper? Discussion?
Yes, as far as discussion, why don't you read, because it is something that we do, the donation.
Oh, okay, yes, thank you. I will. I'll read the donations. We received donations from the Commack Roadrunners Club for the cost of hiring a chartered bus, and $110 to cover the remaining cost of the Suffolk Track Officials Invitational Meet. A donation by Simeon Landscaping of a weeping cherry tree to be planted in the courtyard at Northridge. A donation by Dr. James Feltman of an upright piano to be used by the music department. A donation by the Commack Gold Club Booster Club of 58 game jackets to be used by the Commack High School varsity teams. Donation by Michael Debick of a vinyl cutter, and a donation by the Commack Cheersters Booster Clubs of uniforms valued at $2,300 to be used by the Commack High School varsity cheerleading team. And as usual, thank you to all of those people who support this district, including retired employees. All in favor?
I have one question, Peter. Do you know when the audit report's going to be posted or released to the public?
Well, it'd have to get posted as a draft. I don't know. Figure give Mrs. Lynch a couple of days, and I would say it'd be posted by Tuesday or Wednesday. She does that. It's a big document.
That's fine.
I know she usually runs home and does it tonight, but you can take tonight off. Can I get a motion to? I'll make a motion.
All hour of it.
To approve a first reading of public policy number 8331, public participation in Board of Ed meetings, seconded by Mr. Templini, and I have some discussion on this. And as stated previously, there is an existing policy, 1121. When this one goes into effect, the old one will be obsolete, and I would like it to make one point in here, one change, where we ask people to state addresses. I don't particularly think people want to get up and tell me where they live. I think it should just be whether or not you are a resident. So if we could make that change to a policy. Any other discussion?
I heard somebody else was suggesting you just call the bus school.
No, it's an existing policy. It was actually made. I shouldn't be doing this, but actually the reason was, the reason we originally put the policy into effect was Mr. Tournay, before he was on the board, attempted to Shanghai a board meeting, and that was the purpose of the policy. All in favor of accepting the first reading with the amendment? Or do you have a...
Yeah, well, I just had something to say. Look, I understand the reason for wanting to do this. I personally don't believe that it's necessary. I think, based on the meetings I've been at, both as a citizen and on this board, we are not faced with a litany of people lining up to speak. I think we can handle this the way we've been handling it on a case-by-case basis, so that every community member has a chance to speak. I think limiting them to 3 minutes as a matter of rule is something I would really frown on, and I would oppose this revision.
Would you like to modify it to 5 minutes, or just leave it as unlimited?
I believe I think we should leave it the way we've had it. I don't think we need to have anything in writing.
Well,
the board let me finish. The board has the power to govern the meetings as it sees fit, and there's no reason to put any kind of limitations or restrictions on what we should be doing. That's just my view.
I have to tell you, this is a little mind-boggling, because yes, there was an unofficial policy, and I had some of my fellow board members last month tell me, you can't do that, there's no policy. So now we put a policy into effect, and you tell me you don't want the policy. So which is it? Do we want a policy, or don't we want a policy, and do we want to limit the time? Let's discuss it right here. Do we want a time limit or not?
I think that the time limit is at the discretion of the board, and we should do it on a meeting-by-meeting basis, depending on the number of people who want to speak, the number of issues. That maybe that one person has 5 issues, but there's nobody behind them. Should we limit them to 3 minutes?
I'd make it 5 minutes with discretion of the board, certainly. When you get in the May, June timeframe, we get a lot of students here, we really want to hear them beyond the point. One of the things is we're all here to work for one reason only, which is the students. That's our main goal. So we should all keep that in mind when we are speaking and thinking about what we're saying. The whole board appreciation, it's about the kids and making sure they're getting the best education possible. So I'm in favor of generally putting the 5 minutes in, but also putting it at the end of the minutes at the discretion of the board for it to go longer than 5 minutes as deemed necessary.
I hate to do this. The board or the person chairing the meeting?
The president of the board is designated as that person,
Fine.
and that would be good.
Okay, so...
And of course, we have, I would hope, an effect on your thinking.
Okay.
And in fact, I do believe, as was noted by Mr. Hartman during the week, is other places, what was a way to run a meeting, maybe even 5 or 6 or 7, 10 years ago, has now become a matter of detail that maybe we don't like, but it does become a matter of structure. So as much as we had the 5 minute all these years, and we never stopped any child from speaking, we seldom stopped anyone from speaking, and it isn't directed at one person, even though you should wear a smile when you see it. But the idea is that if we do not have some structure, we cannot lean on any kind of statement. So to have the policy, your discretion, and the 5 minutes is numbered. If we do not choose to allow to have that done, we're fine. But it isn't a bad thing to have the structure to rely on.
Okay, so we modify it to 5 minutes? Okay.
We're not discussing what the policy is, a couple of readings of the policy.
Well, then we now have to have a second reading, and I'm not sure if we have to have a third after we modify the first, but we can figure that out by Robert's Rules of Order at another time. All in favor? That's unanimous?
Against. Thank you.
Okay, 4 yes, 1 opposed. New business item Q, can I get a resolution to, upon recommendation of Superintendent of Schools, that Resicola Heifer be appointed as interim district treasurer to act in Kerry Reinhardt's absence at no additional compensation? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mrs. Mastiello. Discussion?
Mr. Freeman?
Sure. Actually, what we're doing by doing this, to have a second signature in the case of we have one district treasurer / accountant. Her role is quite large, and there may be occasions where she could be out sick, she could be out on vacation, she may be at a conference or meeting. This will give the district the ability to have a second signator so that district business could continue in her absence at no additional cost.
And the choice of resident who is outside the business manager was done for?
The reason for that, and thank you for bringing that up, is to choose someone who is not part of the business office to maintain separation of controls and that integrity. We did run this past our auditors to make sure that this satisfied that, and they said it did.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for volunteering for this. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Can I get a right, that's why I was thanking you. Can I get a motion to adopt the 2013-2014 tax levy as approved by the voters with the numbers on the spreadsheet? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mr. Tampolini. Discussion? I just want to state that when you see the tax numbers, while Dr. James stated, what is it, 1.65, I believe? I'm fine, 1.585. The numbers on your tax bill will be higher because the valuation of the homes in both towns decreased, because anytime your neighbor grieves his taxes, his value goes down, you have to pay a share of that. And someplace I have the number, but it was quite substantial in both towns. So the percentage increase is greater than the tax levy we approved tonight. However, it is still lower than the tax levy that was in the budget. And just one other discussion item. There was a change in the STAR regulations. I don't know if anyone knows this, but in order to qualify for STAR next year, except for the enhanced STAR for seniors, you must apply online by, I believe, December 1st. But please, if you don't apply online, you will not get your STAR rebate next year. December 31st? Oh, okay. All right. Well, just remind me.
Read your courier.
Richard? No, I'm in East Northport. I didn't get it.
No, I'm saying that's
a separate
advice.
issue.
Your advice is to
Okay.
read
All in
it.
favor? Aye. Passed unanimously. Can I get a motion to acknowledge receipt of the names of those individuals interested in serving on the Commack Historic Committee? Motion made by Mrs. Goober, seconded by Mrs. Masiello. Discussion. And again, thank you for all those people, to all those people for all the work you do sitting behind the scenes up there in that moldy office in the top of the house. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Can I? Dark, dingy, mold.
We don't have any mold.
That was the wrong word. That was the wrong word. That was the wrong word. It was, I meant dingy. Can I get a motion to approve the Lamb and Barnowski bills for August and September in the amounts of $12,241 and $6,937.80? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mr. Tampolini. Discussion?
Yeah, I have one thing. Look, as many know, I'm an attorney, and I take issue with some of the billing that Lamb and Barnowski's been doing, and I don't mean to suggest that they're doing anything inappropriate, but there's a thing called block billing, which many law firms use. I, as a client, would not want that done to me, and I've requested a number of times that this be addressed by Lamb and Barnowski, because when you block billing, for those who don't know it, you're basically bulking in on several different tasks, whatever it's phone call, draft memo, meeting, and then you're putting in 4 hours. But you're not indicating how much time you're spending on each task. As a client, it doesn't give us an opportunity to see if the lawyer is being efficient with his time. And so I think that needs to be addressed, and so with respect to these bills, I'm not going to vote to approve them until...
Well, two things. First of all, we did get a new format this month. This is not the format you were looking for?
No, there's still block billing.
Okay, fine. And by the way, we're not approving the bills, we're only acknowledging receipt, so you don't...
Okay.
Are you all in favor of acknowledging receipt?
I acknowledge we received the bill.
Okay, so unanimous. Can I get a motion to acknowledge receipt of the internal claims auditor's report and the CSE, CPSE, and the financial reports, A, B, and C? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mr. Hartman. Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, now, we're just going to throw this out there. Can we get there's a proposal to form a Marion Hall Property Committee. Would someone like to start the discussion?
Sure. As many people know in the community, this district was given the Marion Call Farm property over 40 years ago. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to use it to its full intended use, and the district has been struggling with this property for a number of years, and we're looking for solutions to try to figure out a way to get it basically off the responsibility of the district and the taxpayer. And the reason we're suggesting, or at least I've suggested, that we try to form a committee is to allow some citizens in the community to come forward and participate and maybe be able to provide some assistance, some ideas, some creative means that we've been unable to accomplish thus far in trying to figure out a way to get this property off the district payroll. So I'd like to see if the board would be in favor of allowing community members to join together to try to help us facilitate us getting rid of this property.
Who would be on the committee, and what would they be charged with doing?
Well, I think what we would do, my suggestion would be to put out some kind of notice to the community, whether on the website or otherwise, letting them know that we're looking for volunteers, and it can't be an unlimited number, a reasonable number, and they will be charged with trying to figure out how best to deal with this property that would be to the best benefit of the community and the district, and that we can agree on. As everyone knows, there was an attempted sale back in 2010 that was voted down by the residents. And so I think we need their input to decide or come to some agreement that both sides can live with on how to deal with this property going forward. And I just want to point out, I'm not looking to form this committee so that everybody can rehash what was done in the past or what wasn't done in the past, or to criticize. The whole goal of this is to move forward with this piece of property and figure out how to get it off the responsibility of the district. And if it can be used for a park or something, and you can find somebody to take it that way, great. If it needs to be sold and subdivided, well, if that's what it's going to be, well, that's what it's going to be. But we just can't let it sit here and rot any longer. We need to make some real efforts. And I think we can only do that with the help of the community. As you know, none of us get paid for this. Volunteers who maybe have more time to make phone calls and make inquiries to people who may be interested to see what we can do with this property. I mean, that's my idea. Obviously, we can flesh it out as we go along, but the first step is to get the people involved, and then we can figure out the game plan from there.
I have to disagree with two of your statements. There are not two sides. There were three sides when the bond issue was put up. There were those of us, and I will say how I voted, that I voted to sell the property, and I agree with the Holiday proposal. There were people out there who voted no because they didn't want to ever sell it, and then there were people who thought we weren't getting enough money. So there were more than two sides. And to say that the board and the administration for the last 10 years has not been trying to get rid of that property and has not come up, I think, and I was not on the board all that time, I think that does a disservice to the two long-serving women sitting on both sides of me here, that they have not been struggling for the last 10 years to do something with that property. The board has entertained. We did RFPs, I guess it was a year ago, it might have been 2 years ago, I don't even remember anymore, this has been going on forever, and got no proposals. No one in the community has yet to come forward with a viable proposal from any place. If anybody could find funding, we have always been open to looking at it. Plus, we're still in the midst of the litigation. I think it'd be premature to do anything until the current lawsuit is settled, and even think about setting up a committee.
What harm would a committee do? What harm would it be to form a committee?
Could I say something, Peter?
By the way, one of the public participations is We are not accepting people yelling at us from the audience and cross discussions with other people when they're at the microphone.
Could I say something to you? I thought tonight, when it was suggested that we add some people to the audit committee, and when we first put the audit committee together, it was brand new to all of us, and it was an effort that was put as a responsibility for us. So we started with the board. And now, with in fact so many people with professional ideas, with accounting ideas, with number strengths, have asked us, and at times gotten rather unhappy about our answers with regard to our budgeting process. When it was suggested that we have an audit committee expansion to include other people, it was stated that those people should have some credentials with regard to being able to sit down and share and have ideas or hear, or actually maybe even just learn what the process is, because it's a little bit different and sometimes very different from other businesses and the private sector and all of that. So that makes sense. And it was something that perhaps we could have done years ago, but it makes much more sense now and it's worthwhile. But with regard to this, I don't really know. There should be some hesitation to just bring people into a room without necessarily having some criteria for what brings them together. Do they have an understanding of Marion Carl history? Do they even have an understanding of what it takes to be able to qualify to have any impact on that property? So I'm not sure we're ready. I'm not objecting to the community being more aware of all the ins and outs of the Marion Carl issue, because I do believe, because the point I think that was misjudged back then when we did that vote was we didn't have enough conversations all over the place about that one effort.
I'll give you a moment.
I
Really?
just want to see if the microphone is working.
Okay. So, with that in mind, I don't know that we're ready because we don't have criteria. Are you just interested in Marion Carl? Because as Peter said, we have reached out in every direction. We have made, through the courier, through the web, we have constantly said, anybody who has an idea, come to us. And many have come to us. And then they'll find out a few things, and they'll either drift away, or they'll try to do something for a while. We have sat through I've been doing this for 15 years. Sitting through meetings, people who have a big idea, really desirous of helping, if they can. Because it's not easy. So, not to take away from our ever having it, I really think we better be careful that we just aren't bringing people into the room to kind of ramble. We have to have a goal, we have to have credentials, we have to, just like with the auditing, we don't want, because what could happen, it could make the matters worse. It could make the misunderstanding greater. And I worry about that more than anything, because I would love to find a solution to that property. I hated the idea of just getting it off our backs. I don't know what we're going to do now, but that was it could have been such a wonderful piece of property for this town. It's kind of like the gift that keeps on taking, and we don't know what to do. But I don't know, just sitting people around a table without having a force or a credential or a knowledge of what they want, right now, with litigation still going on, is the way to go. Did I have 5 minutes?
No.
I mean,
3 minutes.
let me just respond real quick. First, I didn't say that the board did nothing. What I said was that the district and the board before us were unsuccessful in trying to get this property, okay? Secondly, whatever we've done hasn't worked. I think the last RFP we put out was maybe 2011. So just doing nothing isn't going to help anything. And I don't see the harm in getting people together, just as an advisory committee. They're not empowered to do anything other than try to get some heads together and figure out what to do with this property and make suggestions to the board. That's all.
The reason we have not done anything further is we have been advised by counsel that as long as that lawsuit is hanging over our heads, it would be, and I'm not sure unethical is the right word, but it would definitely be wrong for us to offer to sell a piece of land that we might lose because of the lawsuit. We'd be subject to risk of whoever we even negotiated with started the discussion. I have had somebody come to me and is willing to buy it, But I told them flat out, we can't do anything until the lawsuit gets settled. So that's why we haven't done another RFP. We can't do anything until the lawsuit, and you know we can't discuss where we are legally, but until that is resolved, we can't do anything. Okay, go ahead. Now.
Who wants to buy it?
I can't tell you. I won't tell you.
That's one of the problems with the board. There's not enough transparency. And I think the other important thing is that Mr. Ciampolini said was that we have to be able to notify the residents of Commack what the Marion Call Farm can be used for. Right now, is it a farm or should it be a park? Should it be someplace where we grow vegetables, or should we have a museum there? No one knows. But one thing we do know is that there are, 2,500 people signed a petition saying, don't sell it. I think what Jim is saying is that we have to notify the people in Commack residents, and it's got to be, whether through the courier, some way of getting people together, because there are things that can be done with the Marion Call Farm. If you look at Newsday, every year they come up with a book about that big of what is happening in each town. You know what's happening in Commack? There's a telephone place you can look at. Nothing else. And we're one of the largest towns in Suffolk County. I don't think the school board has been doing what they should be doing and getting more information out to the residents. It isn't just a question of, hey, do you want the Marion Call Farm? What can it be used for? There are some towns in Suffolk County that periodically they get a metal detector and go through their property and they pick up stuff that people left over from the Civil War. Some of the people in Commack go back to the Revolutionary War. There are some cemeteries there. We're not doing enough to notify the people. Hey, we have here a diamond in the rough, and let's see what we can do to make it something that you use for the...
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
We hear what you're saying, and I think I first have to just state that the Board of Education does exactly what it is directed and empowered to do, and that is educate the 7,600 students of Commack. The gift, and I'm not being facetious because it is a gift, that Marion Carl left us of that property was one that you full well know there was no funding stream for it. And it is probably unconscionable and could possibly be illegal for us to divert funds that we should be using for our children, math counts possibly, to be improving and bettering that property. So we have done what we should be doing, and all along the boards that preceded us made every effort to find funding for it that didn't come out of the tax dollars that the community paid, because that's not an appropriate use of the tax dollars. So that's number one. Number two, you suggest what should be done. Right now, there are restrictions on that property that we have no ability to do anything beyond what those restrictions are. Okay, Marion's will. There are other covenants. So it isn't just do with it what we think we want to do. And as far as, I'm going to address Jim's suggestion of the committee, I think we have a committee already. The Commack Community Association, I think we have a committee. I think you all are getting together every month or so, and you come up with various thoughts and ideas, and anybody is able to join that committee and offer a voice, and I would be happy to hear your comments and concerns. I know Mr. Ettenberg used to come, fairly regularly and give us some report or suggestion or different things. And so I think we already have a de facto committee. I don't know that we necessarily, as a board, need to form.
Excuse me, did you fix the historic committee, or was it?
No.
Can I just suggest something? We have a group that was actually officially called Friends of Marion Park, and you now are on that committee. It is called the Commack Historic Committee. Those people, if ever we touch a thing in that house, those people have been asking and set up. They are our archive committee. Can we possibly take, and with all due respect, go to the leaders of the committee that you just joined and approach them? They not only have the history, they know everything about that place and have done things over time when things were happening. I believe if we want to extend, as Mr. Tampolini wisely said, we do want to engage the community, but we don't want people to just come in and not necessarily know all the different steps that we're taking and the history, as well as how to move forward. Why can't we ask the Historic Committee to be the charged committee to look into how to expand, and I know, Peter, you're going to be big on this, and expand this responsibility directed towards Marion Park. They're already in place, they meet, and Hilda Haas just retired, but she was Miss Commack for generations, and really, these are the people that know your town. They know both sides. They don't even have the political parts of this. They are dedicated to the historical part. So let's see if we can start with them, because I really don't think we should just say, anybody want this, and then bring people into a room. I don't know that we will cause more harm than good, because it's an emotional issue. And we don't need people to misunderstand what we should be doing for children for an emotional issue that we care about.
I want to limit this discussion to just whether or not we should be forming a committee, not what we should be doing with the property, because they're two totally different issues, and we'll be here till...
So I would like to ask us to look into bringing this to the leaders of the historical committee and see, it's not going to happen overnight anyway, see how they can approach it and if they want.
There's a couple of points I want to make for Debbie Luber, and that was, if you look at the Marion Call will, it was signed by superintendent of the school at that time, Mr. Del Rossi. And
I got to stop. I really don't want to go through the history of Marion Call Farm. I think we have to leave it here. We really have to leave it here because we'll be here for...
Hold on, let me finish with this.
Talk after the meeting. And by the way, I'm just going to say one other thing. You and I had a discussion. You probably don't remember. It was me back in August. I was buying a lottery ticket on the line behind you. And I made a pledge then, and I'll make the pledge tonight. If I hit Mega Millions Friday night, I will give $1 or $2 million to fix up the building.
By the way, I never forgot that.
Well, I'm making that pledge.
By the way, we know you.
So, okay, if we can...
Okay, right. I think what we have to do is be able to tell the people in Commack that we have a Marion Call farm. We need someone who knows how to run a museum. We need something with a farm.
Okay, thank you. Can we agree with this?
I actually think that's a pretty good idea. My only concern is that it's limited only to people that are on the historic committees. They're looking at it.
Oh, no, I don't want to stay there.
No, let them start the ball rolling. This is what we got.
I get my 3 minutes in, and then you make a decision.
No, we're limited. Oh, is it about the committee?
Basically, it's just a comment. It's very clear.
Okay.
Go ahead. If it's about forming the committee, go ahead.
No,
And I respect that.
I have to say this.
No. This is why we have to...
This is a board meeting in public. You are more than welcome to speak. But this is a board meeting in public, not a public meeting. It's a board meeting in public. So when Mr. Tampolini speaks to perhaps yes or no or maybe about an idea, he should be able to finish his, and then I should be able to hear him. And we are not going to vote on this until we allow you to speak. But I can't hear him if you're saying that, you're being deprived of speaking. So, yes, Mr. Tampolini?
Okay, thank you. What I was going to say was that my only concern is that the committee, my idea would be that the committee would be a broad-based, consistent of people with a broad base of ideas, not just people who want it as a farm or people who want it in a museum, because that may not be feasible. And I think we need to have a lot of people with, well, not a lot of people with varying opinions or ideas on what to do with it so we can come to a consensus. So that's my only concern, but I think actually that's a very good idea. And you may have to have a few more people, but I can live with that.
No, I agree with you. They might be an offshoot and a whole other set of people along with them, but I agree with you.
No.
I have to say that because
No.
Mary Jo had made a statement which is not totally correct.
No. Your 3 minutes are up, because if I do that, I'm going to have to give Mr. Fusco his extra. Time is up.
Mr. President, I'm sorry, and as a rule, as our Robert's rule, point of order, this is a
Board discussion. We're ending the discussion, we're having a vote. I think that's where we have to go. Thank you. We're ending the discussion, we're having a vote. Are we in agreement?
Can we hear from the next two gentlemen first, real quick?
All right. No, we're ending the discussion. No, you don't have to. You have 3 minutes at the end.
You gave it to me. Now you're taking it away.
All right, go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead. And limited to forming the committee.
Commack, 74. We have a school that I came from, St. Patrick's, along with money. We took that school into a charter school, and it's called Growing Up Green School. If you can look that school up, I will come back and I would answer any of your questions.
Okay.
And Mrs. Bostovich was your PTA president, correct?
Oh, yeah.
And I am her brother.
She was a PTA president in the high school.
Yes, and I am her brother John, and she's asked me to come to our board.
Hi.
Yes. And ask if we can look at the model that Mrs. Bostovich is a benefactor to. And as a president of PTA, she would like to stand up for Marion Clark with Growing Up Green for Commack.
Could you send us that and we'll look at it?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Be okay. All right, that's fine. Thank you.
I applaud you all
Thank
because you had a great time tonight. Thank you so much for my 3 minutes.
Whether we have a committee or not, this idea has to...
We'll take those ideas at any time.
Here, Joe, I think we're on the same wavelength. Thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
Do I get 3 minutes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Bruce Ettenberg. Mr. Wunsch, I believe that just before the lawsuit was filed, you had, Lamar Banowski had a viable solution that they were discussing writing a contract with the AHRC. Am I correct in that?
I couldn't comment on negotiations, and I really don't remember.
Well,
besides that,
I've been in touch with the AHRC.
The purpose here is discussing forming a committee, not a history of Marion.
And that's what I'm discussing, forming a committee. I don't believe the committee should be an historical committee. I think the committee should be a committee based upon finding out what to do with Marion Call. Not the history of Marion Call, but let me have my 3 minutes. I won't interrupt you, I promise.
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Okay. Not the history of Marion Call, but finding out what to do with Marion Call in the future. And that committee should be a broad-based committee of members of the community who have been working on that for the last 3 or 4 years. And the reason that there was a negotiation was that the Commack Community Association went out and beat the bushes and found people that were willing to pay for the restoration of the house and to put a viable solution for people to be on the Marion Call farm to farm. And just to have an historical committee, I don't think fits that bill. Thank you very much.
That's it. I would like to make 2 comments from the board, and we're closing the mic. I'm sorry, Mr. Fusco.
Oh, no.
It has nothing to do with you. I was closing the mic. If you had these people, I wish they had come forward to us. And I'm going to say something that I've been sitting on for 2 years, and I'm going to really, some of you people are not going to like what I'm going to have to say. But about 2 years ago, I read the new Robert Caro biography of Lyndon Johnson. It was about 1,000 pages. And in there, Johnson was worried that he had no support from Kennedy, and basically he was stuck in a back office and did nothing. So what he decided to do to curry favor was he went and he gave 4 head of cattle to Jackie, figuring if he could curry favor with Jackie, he could curry favor with JFK. After 5 months, the cattle was costing Jackie so much money, even with the money the Kennedys have, that she sold the cattle. That is exactly how I look at this farm. Now, can we have a vote on
Well,
that?
I didn't get a chance
Oh,
to
yes,
speak.
I'm sorry, yes.
I get my 3 minutes of fame now.
So you have as much time as you want.
You're not limited, you're not limited.
A lot of people, it's a lot of emotion and discussions, and I see a lot of different sides of the story. And I think one of the points I want to make, I mean, I like the idea of bringing the historic committee. I do like the idea of bringing in, like Jim said, other people and other ideas. But I think that Mary Joseph, for the fact that there has to be something bound by this, because there are a lot of laws and regulations on this property. I mean, Jim and I toured the property about a month ago. It's could be used for a lot of different things, but there's a lot of restrictions that have to go on, and with the pending lawsuit as well. So the idea of forming a committee is okay to get ideas, but at this point to actually react and start doing something and telling the community we're doing something would actually be being a falsehood. So I mean, idea of getting more ideas and more people together, but not the idea of starting to react just for the sake of reacting. So go ahead.
I'm not sure where we are. We recommended giving it to the historical committee. And by the way, do we have a board member who wants to be on this committee? No. Your time is up. I'm sorry. Your time is up.
There was never an intent.
I'm sorry. The time is up. We cannot do this.
I'll throw myself on the sword here.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Jim. Okay, can I get a motion? Oh no, now we're going to move to item E to discuss the possibility of live streaming of the Board of Ed public meetings.
I'll take this one first. How's that? Did you have a proposal? Do you have a proposal?
Well, no. Okay, I don't know if anybody heard that. The superintendent said it's about $5,000 to videotape and put it up on the website, and about or $5,000 to, and that's per year.
It's about $5,000. Mrs. Newman, I believe the estimate was $5,000 for the year to videotape and post on the website.
Yeah, in year one, it would be a little less than $5,000. That would encompass purchasing the camera, storage for it, cabling and installation. Of that, the webmaster time required to set up for the display, and download time, monthly maintenance, and it was believed it would be under $5,000. The live streaming would be using a video conference camera to stream to our web server. That would have an implementation time by in-district staff. Also monthly maintenance was estimated about 4 hours per month. Number of viewers, depending on the number of viewers, there could be an additional cost of up to $120 per month for streaming services.
Based on the number we would pay for people who use, in other words, if I went on to watch it, the district would be paying.
Yes, if it was
okay.
over.
All right, go ahead.
What is the cost after the first year for just putting it on the website, the video?
That would be, well, we'd obviously have the camera, so that would be about $450 less. And the cabling and installation would be a one-time charge. So about $650 or so less.
Does it make a difference because we hold meetings in different locations? Does that
I believe this was for one site.
So in the meantime, we
So
hold
if we were
meetings,
not
hubs
at that
here,
location.
the little theater, and we do one a year at Bar Sawmill, so it would be more money.
I would expect that, yes.
I would think a video would be portable, but a video streaming would have to be.
I believe because I see installation time here, so that I'm making the assumption that it would be a permanent install, but I don't know for certain.
The installation could also, I'm sorry, the installation could also be, Scott.
No, I'm saying if we need to we need to have movement on the video camera because we're at different locations, but it may not make sense to incur the cost of putting it in one location that we may not be at 100% of the time.
I'm not sure that the installation costs are associated just with the camera. Some of it may have to do with storage, which doesn't include. So the storage device, the hard drive, that installation is one-time cost. Though I'm not sure about the camera, whether and its portability or not.
I'm not clear from the information
So
I received.
it might indeed be portable.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's something out there that we can get that we have a big hard drive that's portable that we could just take from place to place. It has sufficient memory on it to record the meeting and just upload it somewhere on the video on the website.
Yeah, I think the cost associated with that is the actual hard drive in which it would be stored so that it could be viewed. Right, so the device itself, yeah, you're right about that. The device could have enough storage space to then bring it back and then load it into a file server.
Okay, can I make a suggestion? What I'd like to suggest is start off small, maybe Mr. Fusco, to his great credit for the past 2 years, since you take this right now, to start off, put it, since this would be like an out-of-budget expense, I would assume, start with a small camera, set it up somewhere similar to him, put it up there and see how many people are actually looking at it, and then determine maybe in the next 3 or 4 months whether or not it's worth the investment of people to $5,000 of that kind of large expense.
Well, I would think it would depend if you can...
We're not taking comments from the audience on this, Mr. Fusco.
You're arguing about like nonsense. It's costing nothing.
Mr. Fusco, we are not, if I have to get security to remove you, we are not taking comments from the audience.
Mr. Wunsch, you're totally wrong.
I said we're not taking comments from the audience. This is a board discussion.
He's got a very good idea. He's been
no one is supposed to be jumping up and yelling.
He's been
Mr.
doing this for 2 years for no cost.
I'm sorry, sir, gentlemen, it's a board meeting and there's proper protocol. We don't mind your comments, but please, notwithstanding the commentary from this table, I would ask that you please just follow the rules, come to the mic at the appropriate time, that's all. Just don't scream from your seat. That's all I'm asking, please. So, no hand raising, nothing from the seat, just come to the mic at the appropriate time. Please allow us to have our conversation. It's our discussion. You have input. I respect the input, Dan. I'm not, Dan, please.
Look,
you can come to the mic. Just please let us finish.
We're not taking discussion from the audience on this.
Let me just finish. Let me just finish.
Yes, we have the mic.
Okay, let's move on. In my view, if it costs $5,000 a year to have the ability to post video of the meetings on the website so that we can let people in the community who can't make these meetings see them if they want at their leisure, I think it creates transparency. I think it's a nominal cost. I think we should, I agree with Mr. Hartman, we should start small. I'm not sure we can measure how many people are looking at it unless somehow we can get hits on it. I'm not sure how that works. But I think that we should make it available to the public because not everybody can come to this meeting, as you can see, we're thinking it is late. And sometimes they want to watch it in pieces. So in my view, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor and anything that can get the community information and more transparency, I'm always in favor of.
All right.
Given that, how do we, is it even possible to do what Stephen suggested as a...
Yeah, but I doubt, I'm going to be the naysayer. Yeah, there are ways that you can measure hits, correct, Mrs. Lynch? I have a feeling that it would be a rig just to leave it up there, so I don't think that that would be an accurate statistic.
No, I'm not...
People go on more than one time just to get hits.
I think we need to, if you want to put up something temporary to try to gauge community input, I'd have to go back to tech and get a proposal. And that's just as frank an answer as I can give.
All right. In the last year, we've cut payments to 2 of our consultants who have worked for this district for over a decade. We cut the benefits of the non-aligned employees. One of our board members wants to cut the salaries of some of the other non-aligned employees. We increased class sizes. We're in negotiations with 2 bargaining units that have had staffing reductions. We're ready to start negotiations with the largest bargaining unit. We cut clubs. I cannot justify spending 1 penny on something that there is not a large clamor of people calling for. So, where do you want to go? Do you want to spend money or not? You guys vote. I'm not even making a resolution.
I don't think that we're at the point of discussing whether we're spending money. I think the superintendent is going to look at, am I right saying that?
It's the board's pleasure. If the board, if I'm directed to get another proposal to see about putting it up temporarily, that would be the direction. If the board wants to vote now, it's the board's pleasure.
I need more information. I think we would be best served if we choose the right path on this, and let's see what we can do.
So you give me more information.
More information,
Not
discuss it in November timeframe.
If I can glean from this conversation, the board's pleasure is for us to get a proposal to determine whether the costs associated with putting up temporary.
Yes.
That's correct.
Well, I'm just going to say one thing. Look, this is fine. You want to table it for the next time, that's fine. But let's not stand up here and be disingenuous, okay? You're going to complain about spending $5,000 a year. You're paying Mr. James, the secretary.
No, well, you're not allowed, hold it, as a board member, you are not allowed to make disparaging comments about
It's not
staff.
disparaging.
I would not take this comment from a person coming up to the microphone, Mr. Tampolino.
I don't think it's disparaging. I'm stating a fact.
To people. We're no longer going to do that, Mr. Tamlin. We're not going to refer to specific people who have only one person in that job. Therefore, the name may not be mentioned, but clearly the person's been identified. We're not doing that.
Okay, you have a $9.8 million surplus.
Yeah.
But you can't find $5,000 in that for video?
I'd rather reset up the Math Counts Club. I see...
Do them both.
I see 2 or 3 people in this district asking for it. I've been coming to board meetings for 20 years, 14 of them when I was not a board member. People will come. Do you really think somebody is going to sit at home and watch this meeting for 3 hours on the internet? I really doubt it.
They watch the Smithtown one all the time. Channel 16, I watch.
All right, can I get a motion to adopt the following resolution? Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Commack Union Free School District shall hold its regular business meeting on Thursday, November 21st, 2013 at Hub's Administration Center, East Northport. Time to be announced at a later date and will be posted at least 72 hours prior to that meeting date, and we will probably be adjourning into executive session earlier than the meeting. Motion made by Mr. Hartman, seconded by Mrs. Masiello. Discussion, all in favor? I passed unanimously. Now I will take comments from the microphone for 3 minutes, and 3 minutes only on anything you want to discuss.
Okay, I'd like to talk about the middle school tennis. We're the only one in Suffolk County that has an 8-game program. Everybody else has a 10-game program. And on the other one, the middle court at the middle school is no good. We have no home games for those kids. Just to inform you. Okay, and then I was getting a haircut the other day. I just want to bring this to your attention. We have a retired secretary being called back to work at a higher pay to substitute as a secretary, and we have laid off secretaries. I don't understand what it was, like Mr. Templin said, we're worrying about $5,000. Why we bring back a woman at higher pay? We have laid off secretaries that we can bring back at a cheaper salary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just 2 minutes. The start group, by the way, is a great idea. The intent was not to do anything with Marion Call, only just to get any paper, documents, etc. That was the only intent. We're not going to run it. We're not going to even come up with a plan on how it should be run. Just to extract all this historic papers you have in there and just start a start as part of the start group. But I think getting the people in the community together, I think would be the most beneficial thing. There may be some good ideas out there. And if we did it before, let's try it again now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you getting